All right, hello everyone. Welcome to yet another Way Too Indie Hangout. This one's going to be a bit different. It's a bit of a special edition. You'll notice that our usual people like Bernard and Dustin, even Ananda, are not here right now. They've kind of let me take the reins on this one. So, to explain quickly, this is going to be our best of 2014 so far hangout. We decided that because it's the halfway mark, we're going to have a bit of a big blowout to introduce the best films of the year, or our favorites. So the writers, me, Nick, and a couple other writers have paired up, and we're going to actually have, this is part 1 of 3, so there are going to be 2 more hangouts. But before I get into the details about all that, let me introduce myself. You've seen me before if you've seen the hangouts, all 10, 12 of you. I'm CJ Prince. I'm a writer on the site. And with me is a newer writer on the site, Nicola, who you may have read his awesome coverage of the Cannes Festival this year that he did for the site. So, hello, Nicola.
Hello. Thank you
Nick.
for having me.
Yes. So this is actually Nick's first hangout for the site.
Yes.
And hopefully it won't be the last. Okay,
Let's hope
so like I said, today's hangout's going to cover our personal top 5s of the year so far. We're not going to do top 10 because it's the halfway mark, so 5s. But coming up in the near future, we're going to have the best staff list of the best 15 films of the year so far. So in the coming days or weeks, be sure to check the site for that. Also, in the next coming days, we're going to have a couple of the Way Too Indie writers also come out and do their best ofs. So our second part of the hangout is going to be our West Coast writers, Ananda Dhillon and Bernard Bu. And then our third part will be Dustin, our editor and founder, along with Blake. Those two will go on. We'll discuss their picks. Oddly enough, we had the choice that we could choose who we wanted to be paired up with, but it just naturally ended up where we all kind of went by geographic location. Because Dustin and Blake are in South Dakota, Ananda and Bernard are in California, and Nick and I are the Canadians. So
it's nice that it worked out that way.
It worked out, yeah. I mean, it just, maybe we just like what we're more familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, just a quick shout out to Ananda, who's doing a great job on the site right now. She's covering the LA Film Fest, so be sure to go on the site and check out her coverage. She has a whole bunch of capsules up, so you can definitely, it'll be all over the front page. So now, the requirements we had here for this was, we decided we're only going to consider, for the films that were eligible for our list were basically, they had to be released basically between January 1st and June 30th. So within the first 6 months of the year, and they had to be public releases. Because,
North American
releases. Because we didn't want to include festival titles. We wanted to include films that, viewers, listeners, the general public could be able to see. And we're actually going to include some availability for the titles that we mentioned. So, you won't be lost. You'll know where to find these films. So, before we get into our top 5s, we're going to clear a few things out of the way. We figured we'd start off with some honorable mentions. Films that, they may not be in our top 5, but we find are pretty good, or at least worthy of being mentioned. Pretty good, yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, you got these 5 masterpieces, and then it's just the next tier below.
Like the really alright ones. Yeah.
Okay, so Nick, I'll let you go and let us know your picks of your honorable mentions.
Yeah, okay, so my picks for honorable mentions, these guys just almost made it in, but didn't. Like you said, they're not exactly top 5 material, but almost. There maybe a rewatch or two would make them top 5. But the first one is the movie called Joe, by starring Nicolas Cage, and David Gordon Green. Yeah. Sorry, I blanked out there for a second. David Gordon Green, right? It's a really, really cool movie. It's a sort of a coming of age story about a boy who meets a man called Joe, and it has and he kind of like learns from him. The little boy has sort of an alcoholic father and has this tough life at home, and he meets Joe, who kind of becomes his father figure, and the story sort of evolves from there. It gave me a lot of Mud vibes from the movie Mud, because it's starring the same boy, Ty Sheridan, and it's one of Nicolas Cage's best performances I've seen in a really long time. It's directed super well. It's sort of something of like a comeback for David Gordon Green. So yeah, I would suggest that people check it out. It's still in theaters, so that's my first honorable mention. My second honorable mention is Grand Budapest Hotel by Wes Anderson. It's yeah, I mean, Wes Anderson fans have probably already seen it, and if you haven't, you must, because if you're a Wes Anderson fan, you're gonna love it. It's hilarious. It's got his style, it's got his aesthetics, it's got pretty much every actor that he's ever worked with, and it's really, really good. It has kind of dwindled a little in my mind, just in time. When I first saw it, I was extremely impressed, and it immediately jumped into my like top five. I thought it was going to be part of my top five, but then throughout the days, the months, the weeks, whatever, it kind of like slowly drifted away, because basically, anyways, that's that. And then my third honorable mention, I would have to say it's X-Men, actually. Days of Future Past, Bryan Singer's X-Men. I think that he did a really, really good job as far as comic book movies go. He is one of the best right now in the business, next to Christopher Nolan. And yeah, just really, really fun. X-Men is. I'm also kind of biased towards the X-Men because I love that whole mythos of like the whole characters and everything. Ever since I was a kid, I pretty much loved the animated show and the comics and everything. So I feel like Bryan Singer is the one who kind of brings it all together perfectly on screen. So yep, those are my honorable mentions.
So, Joe, I think is that already out on DVD and Blu-ray?
I don't think so. I think that it's still in theaters, or maybe it's in a few select theaters.
Grand Budapest should be out, I think, within a week or two on DVD and Blu-ray. Definitely still in theaters. It's doing quite well. I think it's by far the highest grossing. And X-Men: Days of Future Past, obviously, still in theaters.
Still in theaters, yeah.
Okay, so quickly going into my picks. Actually, the first one is a film that I watched kind of beyond our deadline to submit our top fives. And, our goal in doing this was to try and have everyone watch each other's films so we could really discuss them. But I didn't want to put Nick through this one. Although it's fantastic, it actually is in my top three now, but for the sake of it, it's Lav Diaz's film Norte: The End of History. It's the reason why I didn't want to, I excluded it from my top five here is because it is 250 minutes long. It is over 4 hours. It's basically an epic take on Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. It's I came in watching it and I was really taken back by the cinematography, the filmmaking. It's gorgeous, and it's such an epic, like, crazy story with so much focus on character, but it has a lot of subtext going on. It's such a rich film to watch. It just has a level of scale that you rarely get with a lot of films nowadays, and I think that as the 4 hour length is definitely intimidating, but don't be intimidated by the length. I think that you should definitely watch the film because it's a big investment, but you're going to get a huge return as a result. I have a review on the site, and I know that this week it's playing in New York City. Cinema Guild's releasing in the States. It's going to come out. I assume they're going to roll it out slowly around the country. I hope they do. I mean, it'll probably be hard because of the length to get in theaters, but it's definitely worth checking out. My next pick is a film that more people should be aware of. It's Oculus by Mike Flanagan. Definitely a bigger film, but it actually is an independent production. I saw it at its world premiere last year at the Toronto Film Festival, and I really liked it. It was one of my favorites of the festival. I think it's by far the best horror film to come out this year. I used to say that in American horror films, the only two real saving graces are Ty West and Jim Mickle, because those are directors that I really love. And now I think that like Mike Flanagan, who also has another film aside from this called Absentia, that's a really great indie horror film. I would put his name up there as well because I adore his kind of focus on folklore and like tall tales and legends. This is the film that if you don't, I assume everyone would know, but it's about the haunted mirror, which doesn't sound so scary, but it actually is a very creepy psychological horror film. Very fun, and it has a bit of a nasty sting at the end. So Oculus is in theaters right now, and it's getting a Blu-ray and DVD release in August if you can't check it out in theaters. Finally, my next honorable mention is a documentary called Monica Mana. Another film I saw back at TIFF, and I liked it quite a bit. Put simply, it takes place at a temple in Nepal, and you have to take a 10-minute cable car ride up and up to go to the temple. So what these filmmakers did is they simply took a 60mm camera, they put it in the cable car, and they just filmed passengers as they were going up and down this ride. Coincidentally, the ride is long enough to fit a 16mm reel, and that's all the film is. You're just watching these people go up and down, and I mean, obviously it's not a good sell. It doesn't really sound like exciting viewing, but you'd be surprised because when you start out, it's a bit of rough viewing because, I mean, it takes maybe 20-30 minutes before someone actually says a word. But as you go on, it gets actually quite enjoyable, and you actually get really into it. And I think that it's really fascinating. Even though it's a very simple presentation, it kind of brings up a lot of interesting ideas. Yeah. So I think that you definitely, if you have a chance, if you're willing to take a shot for something a little more experimental, definitely give Monica Mana a shot. It came out in theaters a little bit earlier this year. Once again, Cinema Guild. Mm-hmm. You're gonna notice a trend there. I'm a fan of that distributor, but so yeah, it's definitely in theaters right now in the States. In Canada, I know where we are that it's going to get released next month in Toronto, and I think it might expand a little bit. I hope it does, but who knows?
I hope it comes to Montreal. It's the same people who are, or at least I think they produced it, who made the Leviathan, right? The documentary.
Yeah, the both films come from the Harvard Sensory Ethnography Lab, which is a group of filmmakers who, obviously at Harvard, who they're kind of making films that are less about documentary specifically, that are not about information or education, and more about evoking sensory experience. Mm-hmm. It's right in the name, right? Sensory ethnography. But yeah. So now that we got those out of the way, let's move on to our, as I like to call it, our in memoriam reel of sorts.
Yeah.
Because you may, if you're watching this, and you may be wondering, why didn't you include this film in your top 5 or whatever? Well, we might have just not been able to see it. Because there are a crap ton of movies getting released every week, and as much as we try to see as many films as we can't get to all of them. So we figured we'd just give a quick mention to some films that we think that we really wanted to see, but we weren't able to in time. And if we did, maybe they could have changed the outcome of our list. So now for me personally, I'm a little bit surprised this year because usually I'm always regretting a movie or two that it's like I really wish I could have seen. I'm actually kind of satisfied with what I've seen so far. I'm not really dying to see anything else. I don't feel like there's like a missing piece, so to speak. There are a couple films I'm interested in. Examples are Return to Homs, In Bloom, Exhibition, which I think is coming out this week in New York, The Rover, and Stand Clear of the Closing Doors. But these aren't films that I guess I was clamoring to see or thinking that they'd really, change things out of the way. I'm pretty happy with my top 5. But Nick, what about you? What films you were not able to see?
Yeah, I feel like I maybe was scrambling a little bit, partly because of this hangout and partly because I just didn't get to see a lot of movies that were released in this half of the year, I guess. So maybe because also I went to Cannes and stuff, but I was I think maybe I would be interested in watching Jodorowsky's Dune. I would say Jodorowsky's Dune, the documentary on the director and how he had a problem, or his trials and tribulations of trying to make Dune. Stand Clear of the Closing Doors and The Lunchbox are three movies I'd say that are probably could have made the potential impact into my top five, but I'm not sure yet because I didn't get a chance to see them. So yeah, maybe down the line, maybe they're gonna end up being in my end of the year top 10 or something. Maybe not, I don't know. But everything I've heard from critics and friends and stuff tells me that I'll probably enjoy them at least. So
Definitely. Like I told you, and because you went to Cannes, you're pretty much set for the rest of the year.
yeah,
Because you've pretty much
most
seen all the other half of the year. Now you
yeah,
just got to catch up on what's already come out.
yeah,
And yeah, no, the Lunchbox is one that's definitely I'm going to check it out. It's not something I'm interested, but it's got on my radar more because it has gained quite a I don't know how to put it.
yeah.
It's
It's like
basically
following or
there's
something.
been a lot of support, a bit of a following. I think it's doing quite well for itself.
Yeah, it feels like it's just one of those super. From what I hear, anyway, it's nothing too deep or fascinating or something. It's just like it does something and it does it very very well, and it's like extremely warm and all that stuff. So I don't know.
All right, so now we're gonna get into the main event.
It begins.
We're going to start with our respective top fives. So the way it's going to work is we're just kind of count them down. So I'll start with my fifth spot. Then Nick will do his fifth spot.
Yep.
Yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Um,
Sort of back and forth until
Yeah.
we get to
Back
number
and
one.
and we shall. Yeah. Any words before we begin?
I don't know. Just want to remind people that this is my first time. So if you
Trust me,
hear a lot of
I'm probably
ums
doing
and blanks,
a lot worse than you, and I've done this enough. This is why we let Bernard do the hosting, not me.
yeah, okay, I'll remember that for next time.
All right.
Bernard.
Okay. So I will go first with my
Yeah.
my number 5 pick. Oh yeah, I should mention beforehand that a goal of ours doing this is because even though we do review and all that, we aren't we aren't exactly full time or doing this completely. So a lot of us don't have a chance to catch films, and we actively try to kind of see each other's five, so we could have a discussion rather than just have one of us talk about the film, then the other person says their film, and it's just kind of a that kind of one person talking constantly.
Yeah.
But all right, so let me get into number 5.
So let's just say that we were both able to watch each other's top fives.
Yes, and I think
Yeah.
I think we might be the only ones because
Oh.
I actually, you know what? I mean, I think Bernard and Ananda can't because sadly I think they couldn't be able to. And Ananda has
Yeah,
she's doing her
Ananda's
work
busy,
on the LA
yeah,
Film
yeah.
Fest, but I think Dustin and Blake might do it. I have my fingers crossed. I hope they do, but
Yeah.
not we'll be the only ones. So.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Let's
So
see how it
starting
goes.
with number 5, you guys people may be familiar with this. It's an Oscar nominee for Best Foreign Language Film. It came out in theaters this year, though, in the States, in Canada. This is Hani Abu Assad's Omar. This is a bit of a landmark. Not only was it Oscar nominated, but it's actually the first film that's entirely a Palestinian production. It's completely funded by Palestine and everything. So the basically Omar follows the title character, who him and his friends are part of a bit of a rebel group in Palestine, and they plan an assassination of an Israeli soldier. At the same time, Omar's in love with the sister of one of his friends, working on the assassination, and basically once they actually do succeed in killing the soldier, everything kind of goes to hell for the characters, especially Omar, of course. And then he kind of becomes increasingly paranoid. He doesn't know who to trust. A lot of kind of backstabbings, plot twists, what have you. When I saw this, I was pretty shocked by it. I was pretty surprised, mainly because I think that as just a piece of genre filmmaking, it's really fantastic. And what impressed me the most is, seeing films about the Israel-Palestine conflict or taking place, in that area. I feel like sometimes this is not a knock, but sometimes films they do go out of their way to kind of show to Western audiences, how terrible the conditions are there for the Palestinians. I always think back to Five Broken Cameras, which is a really good documentary. So what impressed me was that Abu Assad, he doesn't really go out of his way to do that. He just kind of shows their way of life, Omar's way of life, all the characters' ways of living. He just shows the kind of non-stop oppression. The film opens with Omar climbing over a wall to visit his friends, and he immediately gets shot at by a soldier. So it's, how do I say? He just kind of presents the world as it is, which I had a lot of admiration for. And I'm also surprised that it's I think it's quite classical as well in its presentation. It's heavily inspired by film noirs and also I think Western films as well. And there's definitely political context, like there's a political subtext, of course. Not really subtext, it's definitely up there, but it definitely works in both levels. You know, you can just admire it as a really great thriller. You can really get into it and you know, like enjoy the twists and all that. But there's a political side to it as well. I think that Abu Assad, he kind of uses Omar's story to kind of show the way of life for people in Palestine. He shows that there is kind of no escape for them, that they're under this constant stress and anxiety and fear for their lives and paranoia. So I think that, you know, you can appreciate on these levels, and it's not, you know, it's not political in a way that feels like it's being shoved down my throat or just over the top or making a really grand statement. So yeah, I mean, that's me. That's my thoughts on it. I just thought it was really great. And if you're wondering, I think just about a week ago, Omar just came out on DVD and Blu-ray, and it's on Netflix streaming, so if you want to check it out. But Nick, you've seen the film recently, so what are your thoughts?
I've seen the film. I like it. I liked it a lot. I enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it more as a thriller than as a sort of, you know, political kind of like movie or whatnot. I also appreciate the fact that Abu Assad didn't really use any, like, you know, title cards or anything like that to kind of tell you where you are and what's going on. He kind of just put you there. But at the end of the day, even though the movie is like kind of solid on all fronts, and I did like pretty much, I mean, I can't really say anything is really bad in it. Like, the performances are great, especially Adam Bakri's performance, the main guy who plays Omar. It's his first movie, or first feature anyway, and the fact that he pulled off that performance is really, really great. And also I loved the fact the chase scenes, the way that the chase scenes were directed is super, you know, compelling, and you know, it kind of puts you into the place, and it's very, very sort of action packed in a minimal way, which I really liked. But at the end of the day, there was nothing in it, or nothing in the story really that was very exceptional for me. It kind of felt a lot of the times, and mostly through its dialogue, I kind of felt it like it was a bit of a sophisticated Middle Eastern cousin to like a Law and Order episode, where a lot of stuff that happens is kind of just happening for plot sense. Like the shooting of the soldier, did it really solve anything? Did it really do anything? Was there any kind of like idea behind it? It didn't really do anything except for the fact that it put Omar in prison, and it kind of like, you know, was the inciting incident of the story. Maybe I missed something. Maybe there was something in it that's deeper than that. But the fact that these rebels are like sort of calculating and plotting, and then they do something that seemingly makes absolutely no impact whatsoever in their revolution, it kind of felt like a little bit contrived on the directors and writers, who is also Hani Abu Assad's part. So that's what I felt. Also, a few exchanges between Omar and Nadia, like the dialogue between them, kind of pulled me away, and it felt to me like I was watching, you know, it felt basically, you know, cliched a lot of the times. Finally, to the point where the only thing that was kind of exceptional really in the whole story is the location. So I know that the fact that, you know, he didn't push it down our throats or anything like that, but just by the mere fact that the dialogue and the story construction overall felt so, I don't know, uninspired in a way for me. It felt like the location itself was the only thing left standing, and he kind of was leaning on this crutch a little bit. But I mean, overall, like I said, I don't want to. It sounds like I'm putting it way too down, like I hated it or something. I really didn't. I enjoyed it for what it was. I did.
No, I get it. I mean, yeah. It's like, well, trust me, when we get to, I think, one of your picks, I'll probably have similar feelings about it
Yeah.
because it's like it's a film that's good, but it's just you don't think that it's really above, like it's not next tier or next level enough to really make it the best of the year for you. I mean,
Yeah, I
see
guess
for
so.
me,
Yeah.
what you think that you found kind of you said they found the story kind of Law and Order esque and all
Yeah, a
that.
little bit. Yeah.
And I mean, part of it is I mean, it's the assassination of the Israeli soldier. I took it as just kind of that's all they could really do. They're just working to do something.
Mm.
I mean, if you look in the area, there's a lot of random acts of
Yeah.
violence like that, and acts of rebellion. But basically, that kind of stuff I liked. I like that it was such a simple, basic story at its core that's why I said like I felt it was classical.
Mhm.
Even the symbolism of the wall. So I know I talked to someone who said that they didn't like it. They thought it was such a cheesy thing, but I don't know. I mean, it worked on me, and
Yeah. No,
I
I
kind
like
of
the wall.
admire.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry to
I
cut you off.
admire. Like, I mean, I kind of admire that.
Mm.
It did have a lot going on, but at its core, like the core story to me was just very simple, basic,
Mhm.
effective, and I think Abuza had really great direction with it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure he did. Yeah, it was, at its core, it was effective for sure, and I can understand and I can appreciate that it was nominated for an Oscar, and it also won the jury prize for Uncertain Regard when it
yeah,
premiered at Cannes and stuff. So I can totally see that. But it's interesting to note. I'll just also kind of say this as well that it lost out the main award in Cannes in certain regard to The Missing Picture, which was also nominated for Best Foreign Film. So kind of these movies little went head to head a couple of times in the year, and to me, The Missing Picture, it totally makes sense why The Missing Picture won in certain
yeah.
regard and not Omar. Let's say it was a little bit more effective for me in that
No,
sense.
yeah, I don't blame. But I mean, I think they're completely different films, of course.
Yeah, yeah,
But
for sure they
yeah.
are. Yeah.
All right. So moving on,
Yeah.
we'll
Ah, yes,
we
my number five now.
yes, your number five.
Yes, my number five is a slightly different movie than Omar.
Slightly, a little bit.
Slightly, just a little bit. It doesn't take place in the West Bank. It's the Lego Movie by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. People, I'm sure, have already seen it, and if you haven't, you absolutely must, because I don't know what you're doing with yourself if you haven't seen the Lego Movie. It's extremely, I don't know. It's premiered, or it came out anyways in early February, and it's still so fresh in my mind. It's as if I seen it yesterday. In a way, it's hilarious. It has great references to pop culture, like Middle Zealand and superheroes, especially like Batman and stuff. So basically, the reason why I find it great, and I think it's deserved of like a top five mention or spot, is the way that it's written and the way that it's animated and the way that it's voice acted by all the actors, which include, I guess I should say, Chris Pratt, Will Arnett, Will Ferrell, Elizabeth Banks, Morgan Freeman, and Jonah Hill, who plays like the best screen version of Green Lantern ever. It's the way that everything comes together in this movie. It feels completely fresh and original, and it's funny because it uses a lot of these pop culture references that we're so kind of familiar with, but it uses it in a way that it makes it feel fresh. It's also extremely giddy, and it's super infectious in the sense that you're sort of sitting down and you're about to watch a movie that's based on Legos. And one of the first ideas that I had before watching that, like a lot of other critics as well, was, oh my god, this movie is based on fucking toys, and what am I gonna do here? I'm gonna watch like a Lego movie. But then you would sit there and you would be completely blown away by the imagination, by the inventiveness of the story, by the heart and everything. Starting with little things like "Everything Is Awesome," that song, which is sounds like it's like your mind telling you that this is cheesy, but your heart is telling you that you don't care, which is ultimately what makes it not cheesy at all. So yeah, I pretty much loved everything about the Lego Movie, except maybe the end part, which is probably why I have it at my top five, not closer to like number one and number two. So if something happens at the end, I'm not going to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but it kind of pulls me away a little bit from the magic, kind of pops the bubble a little, and it was the first time that I kind of frowned, and while I was like grinning and smiling throughout the whole movie and laughing my head off. So it kind of yeah, broke the spell a little bit. But overall, I mean, yeah, obviously I recommend it to everybody. Every time somebody actually, like a friend who is not even that into movies or anything, comes to me and asks me for a recommendation, my first thought is Lego Movie, because I know that people are just gonna universally love this movie. So for those who want to find it or something, it's on iTunes, I believe, and still it's on Amazon Rental, and it's coming out on Blu-ray or DVD very soon, like on June 23rd. It's gonna come out on Blu-ray, so it's definitely worth owning. It's definitely worth watching a lot and many, many times because it's never gonna get old. And yeah, what did you think of the Lego Movie, CG?
Well, yeah, I might get into a little bit later.
Yes.
But yeah, but no, I mean, I love the Lego Movie. I think everyone on the staff loves the Lego Movie.
Yeah.
You know, of course, it happens again. You know, way too Indian, and the one we all love is the very non-indie movie. But no, I mean, I love Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Sometimes you get the last names mixed up. I've loved them ever since Clone High, the very short-lived TV show that was just completely fantastic. And then now they kind of ventured into films. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is one of the few kids movies I actually enjoyed.
Yeah. For sure.
21 Jump Street's fantastic. I mean, I was blown away by how funny that movie was.
Yeah.
I just saw 22 Jump Street the other night, and that's another in my opinion, not as good, but it's just a slight step down. It's still quite entertaining. I think that honestly, the Lego Movie, which I think is probably their best film yet, is, I feel like these guys are at the top of their game in the Hollywood system. They're making incredibly entertaining films, incredibly somewhat original and subversive films as well. And it's working like gangbusters on crowds. I think that they're tapped into something that really is working for audiences, and it worked on me. I really like the film. I love their kind of meta, self-aware sense of humor. I think that it works like gangbusters every time. They just kind of know how to make it funny, how to, call attention to itself as a film. But what really impressed me was it's for a film about basically a brand, much like Transformers, it's actually pretty subversive. I think it was I was surprised at how subversive the film was. The kind of I mean, when you have people coming out and saying, this is a communist film and it's about Lego, I mean, that it's doing something.
Really? People were saying it was communist?
Yeah, because I mean, it's the villain is Lord Business and stuff
right,
like
okay,
that.
yeah,
but,
it's anti-capitalist.
And it's kind of saying that like it's kind of promoting a more communal thing by the end. That, everyone is awesome and great as they are, and there's no like individual that's awesome. But yeah, basically, yeah. So I mean, I love the message to the film. It's one of those universal messages about, like, don't follow the instructions. You can do so much with Lego. I mean, it's not just Lego, but it's just generally be creative.
Yeah.
Just don't box yourself in by anything. And I think that's it's rare for me to see a kids movie that actually can have a really good universal message like that and can sell it as well. I have I was a bit ambivalent with you about the the last act, let's say. Which I think is when it's probably by far the most meta thing they've done in a film yet.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It's the most self-aware part. But honestly, I mean, I felt a little ambivalent at first because I was kind of like, but at the end, it worked for me. Honestly, like, I actually, that kind of element actually, I mean, I won't lie, like, it was a little bit touching at the end, which I was surprised by. But yeah, no, I mean, you explained it quite well. I think that, and I mean, on top of this, I should mention that the movie's hilarious. It's really damn funny. It knows how to do pop culture references without, doing them for the sake of it. It actually has jokes.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that it's probably one of the best endings of the year. Like, I mean, just the last scene is like a perfect cap off to the film.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that.
Cool.
Definitely great. So we'll move on and go to
let's move on.
Your number 4.
Yeah, my number four. Okay, so another great transition from the world of Legos, where
Everything is
everything is
awesome
awesome.
to
Yeah,
everything is awful.
yeah, exactly. So from the colorful world of Legos to the black and white world where everything is not so awesome. It's Ida. It's a movie directed by Paweł Pawlikowski. And yeah, this movie is my number four. It basically follows a young girl called Anna, who is preparing to be a nun, but before she has to take her vows, she's sent by her mother superior to meet with her aunt Wanda. And once she meets her, she finds out why her superior was so insistent on the meeting, which is the fact that Anna's real name is actually Ida, and she's Jewish, and her parents were killed during the Second World War by the Nazis. So the film kind of takes on this sort of road trip vibe where Wanda and Ida slash Anna go on this trip to find Ida's parents' grave, and so that she can sort of say, her proper like goodbye. But in a way, she's also kind of saying hello. So it's and obviously also Ida's character is directly contrasted to Wanda, who used to be a judge and something of a political radical in her days, and she's this crazy free spirit, which contrasts quite nicely with Ida's very conservative sort of view on life and stuff. So why did I like this movie? Why is it number four? I mean, it's there's a couple of reasons, or there's more than one reason really. It's we can start with the two performances from the two women. Agata, I'm gonna butcher these names right now, but it's Agata Trebuchowska and Agata Kuleza. Trebuchowska is the one who plays Ida, and Kuleza is the older one who plays Wanda. This is Trebuchowska's first movie. Paweł Pawlikowski's discovered her, and she doesn't have to do much in the fact that she's extremely charismatic on screen. She has this crazy presence. Obviously, that's why he picked her. It's quite something to just watch her on screen, because she has this face that is a very, very sort of, I don't know, it just pulls you into the story, and she says a lot, even though it feels like a blank expression at times, or it feels like you maybe kind of can't penetrate into her. It's the perfect role for this character because of the faith and because of the sort of turmoil that she's going through, interior turmoil. You can kind of see a few instances in the movie where that facade kind of cracks and you can kind of peer into it, and the performance does it perfectly, I think. The second reason, or which kind of overpowers a little bit the performances, is the actual aesthetic of the movie. The cinematography by Lukas Zal and Ryszard Lachemski. Lots of Polish names here. It's absolutely breathtaking for me. I would say that right now, even having seen movies at Cannes, which are going to come up next year or like later in the year, it's probably the most aesthetically pleasing film I've seen all year so far. It's the way it's shot, the way it's framed. Pawlikowski has a very sort of distinct way of framing his characters, where they would be kind of at the bottom of the screen. There's this whole space above them, which in itself is extremely effective visual storytelling in my mind, which kind of says a lot about the characters and how they feel trapped and all of that. Anyways, overall, the cinematography makes it extremely captivating and absorbing, and it feels that you're watching, the way it's lit and the way that it's directed is as if you're watching a very intimate and an unbelievably personal story that is unfolded through this historical kind of photographic, very, very sensual in a way experience. So for me, that's what attracted me the most to Ida. And then obviously, like, the fact that it's only 80 minutes long, he manages to pack in so much into these 80 minutes, even though it sort of tells a very minimal kind of story, but all kinds of themes are thrown in there, and not just sort of thrown in for the sake of it, but thrown in, and it really gives you a lot of food for thought after the movie finishes. So just to throw a few out there: the enduring impact of the Holocaust in World War II, the women's identities of struggling with faith and questioning their ideas of faith and devotion to God, and then the ideas, this character of Ida, who is basically confronted with her past and how it's going to determine her future. That whole idea, for me, the theme of how the past determines your future, is extremely appealing for me. And last thing I'll mention before I turn it to you, CJ, is that it reminded me a lot. The aesthetic also reminded me a lot of the one of my favorite filmmakers, and I believe he's also one of yours, Bela Tarr. The aesthetics, the framing, the location, and even the use of the live music, the jazz, it reminded me a lot of Bela Tarr. I would probably say, I don't know yet, I haven't researched this, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bela Tarr was a big influence on Paula Lasky. God, that name.
Yeah.
Take it away.
So many skis.
Yes. And wow was.
Yeah, a fun fact about the woman who plays Ida. I won't even try her name.
Yeah.
She's not a professional at all. She was discovered in a cafe in
that's
Poland.
crazy.
Yeah,
That's
so
crazy.
I mean, and that's crazy because she reminds me of like, Bresson always talked, that kind of aesthetic he drove for, where he wanted, you know, his characters, his actors to have completely blank expressions, so the audience could
Yeah.
put their own meaning into it. That's what it reminded me of a lot.
Yeah.
Watching her. Yeah, I feel like your reaction to Omar is kind of how I react to Ida. I mean, I reviewed it for the site. I liked it. Definitely a good film. So, I mean, maybe I'll get the good out of the way first. Yes, it's one of the best shot movies of the year. I was actually I got something wrong in my review. I'll admit that now. I thought it was shot on film. I thought it was shot on 35 millimeter, but it's actually digital. Which I think is a sign of how well shot it is, because
Yeah.
we didn't mention. I mean, we didn't mention. It's shot in the Academy ratio,
Yeah.
and
That's true.
that might that contributes to why I thought it was shot on 35 mil, but it's actually it's not. It was, I think, shot on the Arri Alexa, and they just I think they released 35 millimeter prints or whatever, but yeah, it
Definitely feels like it's film. Yeah. So
yeah, it looks
Yeah.
it's incredibly film like.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the more impressive digital films I've seen.
Mhm.
I think that Ida's good. I think the actress who plays Wanda is great. I think that's one of the best performances I've seen so far this year. But it makes sense. She is kind of the, Ida's kind of the how do I put it? The kind of mute, distant.
Yeah.
She's more of an observer. Whereas
Yeah.
Wanda is kind of the firecracker,
The showy
emotional-
one. Yeah.
yeah, the
exactly.
emotional aspect of the film. So it makes sense that her role would stand out more. But yeah, I mean, for me, as much as I like the aesthetic, as much as I enjoy the look of it, I feel it kind of works against the film in a way. I think that there's no emotional connection for me to the story. I feel like I'm watching it at a distance. I feel as if that it's like the film's encased in amber or something, and I'm just I'm enjoying the aesthetic, but I'm not getting into the film itself, the
Right.
story. I also feel that the themes you bring up, like especially post-war Europe, the kind of recovering and dealing with after the Holocaust, it is a bit rote as a theme. Same with the coming of age aspect, the kind of Ida finding her identity.
Yeah.
These elements, to me, they feel a bit, overdone. I don't think the film really engages these themes in a way that's, it's either the take isn't especially refreshing enough to capture my interest. So I feel like it's kind of like the aesthetic separates it, but if it wasn't shot so beautifully, if you just take that aspect away, this would have been a very typical kind of European art house film that, dealing with these kinds of topics that usually does quite well. It's quite successful. But like I said, it's not a Panda film. Like I enjoyed it. I just, there was just that kind of distance for me from really loving it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you
If
want
you
to go
can't
on.
emotionally connect to it, then that's the different
Yeah,
story. I emotionally connected to it. So if you emotionally connect to it, I think that kind of it is elevated, in the aesthetic. It's just even added on to the fact that you end up loving it even more because of it.
and I feel like the aesthetic too, it kind of calls attention to itself in a way that I wasn't. Like I said, it looks great, but there was it kind of called attention to itself in a way that I wasn't particularly a fan of. It's quite obvious in what it's doing. I mean, you have so many shots of the characters, like off to
Yeah.
the corners of the edges of the frame to kind of highlight their their isolation, all that. Which, like I said, it looks great, but and then also I kind of didn't like the flash shot because you have this very precise style with the fixed with the fixed camera and everything, and then the last shot is handheld, and there's a
Yeah.
very obvious statement being made with that, and
Yeah,
I kind of
sure.
thought it was cheesy in how obvious it was. I get the Bale Tower comparison you made. I mean, I can kind of get it. I personally don't see it because I think that I think it's just because Pavel Polakowski's doing a very story based. He's more narrative focused than Tar is, but I mean I don't disagree with you. I mean, obviously, I mean these are both. I mean, Tar's films and this film, they both have similar aesthetics in
Yeah.
that they're both gorgeous. They're both black and white.
Yeah, well, no, it's the aesthetics. I mean, it's
Yeah,
the,
the
it's
aesthetics,
the,
absolutely.
yeah.
But it's true because I mean, like Tar's films are like he uses a lot of Steadicam and
Yeah.
and and other aspects, whereas Polakowski's very very strict. Like his frame is just like it's like you can feel the borders of the frame in that film.
Yeah, for sure.
But,
It was also like the location, just the actual like setting and stuff. It reminded
Yeah,
me a
no,
lot.
that was
It
great. It's
reminded me
actually-
as if it was in Bellator.
It's interesting too because Polakowski this is his first Polish film. I
Yeah,
think
that's
he
true.
went to most of his films are British. I think usually.
Yeah, British. Yeah.
So this is his first film in Poland, and he was dealing with a topic that it's become a bit of a heated topic in the country. I saw a film a while back, actually not that far back. I think it's called Aftermath. It was based on the similar story to what happens in here about the kind of the realization of I don't want to I shouldn't get into it too much because it's too plot heavy, with spoilers and all that. But that's what the subject matter of the film is based on real life stories and incidents from the past, and a lot of these are actually coming to light now, and the filmmakers I think in Poland are starting to kind of talk about it, and I know that it's not making a lot of the country people happy over there, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, it's interesting that's interesting too. But yeah, like I said, I mean, I enjoyed it, but yeah, no, it wasn't. It didn't really stick out to
Yeah.
me enough to really be
Didn't do it for
one of
you.
my favorites of the year.
Yeah.
But,
Okay, well, we should tell people that it's still playing in select art house theaters
Yes.
across the states, so they should
Still
just
plays.
check your local
Yeah.
listings and then see
believe
if it's
it's-
playing
it's-
there.
Music Box is
It is
handling the
Music
release,
Box, yeah.
and I'm hoping to God they probably will. I'm 100% sure that they'll put out a Blu-ray. Which
Yeah,
is how
I
you should
would
see this film.
It must be seen in Blu-ray. Yeah,
Yeah, it
for
has to be
sure.
seen the best quality. I mean, theater is ideal, but
Yeah.
I mean, high definition
Yeah.
is the next best thing. But
I think it's already out on DVD and stuff in Europe. But, yeah.
yeah, in Europe. But okay, so moving on now, my number 4.
Number 4, yep.
More of a little known film. I made this little comment beforehand about how to somebody where I said that it's interesting to me that we have 2 films from this year. Technically, I mean they're actually both from last year, but 2 films Canadian taking place in rural Quebec dealing with same-sex relationships. And it's interesting because it seems like such a very specific kind of film, but we have 2 of them. I'm shocked we have 1, let alone 2. The other film is Tom at the Farm, which I didn't care for as much, but this one I like quite a bit. It's called Vic and Flo Saw a Bear. It's a film by the Canadian filmmaker Denis Coté, who is he's kind of gained slowly over the years, I think, gained more and more of a following in the art house scene, as one would put it. I think that this is unpredictable cinema at its finest, I think is how I'd put it. It actually, oddly enough, reminds me a lot of Louis C.K. show Louis, in that I really watched this movie and I had no idea where it was going. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I loved that. I was totally open to anywhere it could have gone, anywhere it was going. I was happy because Denis Coté, he has a lot of it's a very beguiling film it's really unpredictable. Like the opening scene, you know, you have this the main character Vic, short for Victoria, I believe. She goes up to these kids playing a trumpet, and she lectures them on how bad they're playing, and she won't give them money. But the way the scene is shot is it starts out with this kind of pulse, like this pounding percussive score, and it's all just off. There's something like off about it, but yet at the same time, it's really captivating. And Cote kind of continues this atmosphere throughout the film, and to me, it kind of felt like it's kind of a bit of a light spoiler, but it feels like the film to me felt like a thriller, except it didn't realize it was a thriller until much later. Because you know you have all these elements going on, the percussive score, some kind of, you know, weird shots here and there, and it's like, but most of the film is just kind of watching Vic as she goes to a dying relative's sugar shack in rural Quebec and lives there because she just got out of prison for a crime that the film never really touches on, but I don't think it matters anyway. And then eventually Flo comes into the picture. It's quite interesting. Like, an example is the way they introduce Flo is she just literally kind of appears out of thin air. There's a shot of Vic in her house, and then it just cuts to her and Flo playing under the sheets in her bed. Vic and Flo, it turns out, were both in prison together, and they were lovers. They kind of got out. Vic got out first, and then Flo came out later. Vic's on parole. Flo served her time. And then it kind of, the film just kind of watches their relationship, how they adapt to their surroundings, and then it kind of shows their interactions with Vic's parole officer. It goes on, and then there's a lot of tonal shifts that go on throughout the film, and especially towards the end, there's quite a big one that I wasn't particularly a fan of, but yeah, Nick knows. But so I mean, it does kind of become, like I said, you know, it's a thriller. It's a thriller that doesn't know it's a thriller until much later.
Yeah.
But I think that you know, I could have watched an entire film of those characters just hanging around, and I would have loved it. And I also think that Cote does a really good job with his framing. I've seen one other film by him beforehand. I didn't really like it. This one, great cinematography, great compositions. I think that he does a really good job of getting into his character's headspace just by the framing, the shots. You have a lot of scenes of characters boxed in, or, you know, there's always something kind of... he's described it himself, I think. It just feels like everything is placed in a very specific way, and everything is kind of making them more and more isolated. But yeah, no, I think that it's definitely a great film. It's definitely an underseen or underappreciated film. It doesn't have a lot of fanfare. It got a very limited release earlier this year in the States by Kimstim. It came out last fall in Canada, but I'm counting it as an American release here. It's available on iTunes now. Definitely iTunes Canada. I'm not sure about the US, but and a DVD. They said a DVD was going to be released last week, but I think it's coming out in August. So just keep an eye out if you want to check it out. It's definitely worth seeing, but I know, Nick, you might have felt a little differently on it. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to say too much. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Vic and Flo, only because I don't want to sound like, you know, I'm kind of beating it into the ground. Like, as much as I really love promoting or like talking about small movies that need to be seen and like under sort of appreciated movies and stuff, I can kind of understand why this is underappreciated, only because I really didn't like it. I really didn't like the fact that it felt so unpredictable or unexpected. It felt, to me, I'm not familiar with Cote's style, so that says a lot. Perhaps maybe if I was kind of aware of the style, I could have been in a different kind of headspace when I watched it, and I would have maybe sort of expected something like this. But when I watched it, I just did not get emotionally involved with any of the characters, and it felt like, to me, like he wasn't, like when you said that it didn't know that it was a thriller until the very end or whatever, and you kind of talk about it as if it's an advantage or like it's a good thing. For me, it's kind of like a bad thing. Like if the movie doesn't know what it is and doesn't know what it wants, like the score, the percussion. At first, it was very compelling, and like the beginning of the movie actually really pulled me into it right away with that first scene of the trumpets, and then her dragging that suitcase and everything. Like it really felt like, okay, this movie is going to be really good, whatever. But then as it went on or dragged on, it felt like he was indulging a little bit, and I felt like started being a little bit too self-indulgent with the music and stuff. And then I'm not going to get into the whole plot and a lot of problems that I had with it, especially towards the end. But suffice it to say that for me, I didn't really get inside these characters as I think that maybe Denis Coté wanted me to. And for that, I kind of really didn't care too much about where they came from or where they were going. And it really, really kind of pulled me away from the movie. And I have to say, yeah, I'm sorry, but I can't get behind it. I just can't.
Okay.
Maybe I need to see it again or
I mean,
under different
like,
circumstances. But yeah.
it surprised me because I saw another film by him before that called Curling, and it had a bit of a fanfare, and Coté was already kind of, I remember the TIFF Lightbox did a retrospective on his films. He's, definitely an interesting Canadian filmmaker, definitely unique.
Mm-hmm.
And
Easy.
I didn't like Curling at all. I was like maybe like you, I was just bored with it. It didn't work for me at all. So, but I heard good things about this. I read some reviews and coverage. It won the Alfred Bauer Prize at the Berlin Film Festival when it premiered in 2013. That's kind of like, I think it's like a second place.
Yeah, it's Silver Bear, I think they call
Silver
it.
Bear. It's so someone liked it.
Yeah, the Berlin Festival.
Yeah, but no, like
Yeah.
I watched. I was like, I mean, like it pulled me in, and
Yeah.
I guess I'm like you. I completely was in sync with whatever wavelength Coté was doing on this. I don't know. I mean, like it pulled me. I was compelled, and I was like, I just really wanted to keep watching and figure out what happened. And even then, like I said, I didn't really care for, say, the more genre elements at the end, but like that kind of coda at the end, it kind of turns a bit more, to use a lack of a better term, like fantastical or unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I liked it,
That.
and,
It's, yeah.
and I liked.
Sorry.
No. I mean, I liked it, and I think that his film is done in a way where he could pull that out, and it won't pull you. It won't. Like for me, it fit with everything. That's why I was surprised how much everything flowed. But yeah, no, I mean, I understand that it doesn't work for anyone. But speaking of not working for some, I'll let you go into your number 3 pick.
Oh, okay, I'm number 3. All right, so we can go into my number 3. My number 3 is a movie called The Immigrant. It's directed by James Gray. It premiered in Cannes last year, but it was only released this year. It's one of those movies, I guess it's an ongoing theme for this top 5. Lots of movies that premiered last year in festivals, but only got their North American release this year. The director is James Gray. It's starring a very sort of top-billed cast: Marion Cotillard, Joaquin Phoenix, Jeremy Renner. And just to quickly go over the plot, it's set in 1920s New York. It's 2 sisters who are sort of fresh off the boat from Poland. They're pursuing the American dream. Ewa, which is the played by Marion Cotillard, is the older sister, I believe, and her younger sister Magda is sick. And when they get to New York, Magda is taken away into a hospital. They tell her that because she's sick, they're going to deport her back to Poland. And Eva kind of freaks out. She basically just wants to be with her sister and wants to start her life anew in America. And she finds Bruno, who is this man who is played by Joaquin Phoenix, who is there recruiting. And we find out later on, he kind of takes her under her wing, brings her to his house and everything. We find out a little later that he is actually pretty much a pimp, and he has like a burlesque show and everything, and he promises Eva that he's going to help her and that he's going to help her sister out and everything because he has his connections and stuff. But of course we find out that there's a big price to pay, and that is that Eva pretty much has to prostitute herself. And then the movie kind of takes it on from there. She meets this magician called Orlando, played by Jeremy Renner, who has a relationship with Bruno as well. And basically, I'm not going to get into it too much because then that's getting into the very, very sort of plot heavy into it. I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, why is this movie my number 3? I mean, James Gray is one of those I find super underappreciated directors working in the States right now. I think that he's made We Own the Night and The Yards and a lot of movies that people kind of just sort of swept under the rug and didn't like for whatever reason. But I always enjoy his movies, and I think that The Immigrant is probably my favorite one from him so far. I loved, wow, so many things about this movie, and the way that it just pulled me into its world is probably the number one thing. This is like an ongoing thing for me. If the movie manages to pull me into its world, then it immediately works. In this sense, it's the cinematography from Darius Khondji, and the music from Chris Spellman that kind of help James Gray direction pull me into this 1920s New York setting. And really, like, the fluidity of the direction and the flow of the scenes completely immersed me into the story, so much so that there were many moments when I was watching the movie and I didn't believe that I was watching a movie that was like made in the 21st century. I felt like I was watching like a relic of the times that it was depicting. So for me, that is like, movie magic right away. Another reason why I loved it so much is the story itself. It's so rare for me to watch a movie where there is a central female character who isn't, whose main purpose in the movie isn't sort of based, whose life rather is not based around a man or like a child or whatever, but is actually like, her main conflict in the movie is about her sisters, is a sisterly bond. So for me, that's something unique. That's something that not a lot of people really do so much, and especially with immigration movies, there's been a ton of immigration movies, and this one kind of sets it apart because of that, because it's a very strictly it's a very, very female movie in that sense. And, I guess you could say like a little feminist in that sense, which I appreciated. The evolution of the characters as well is something that I really, really liked, especially Bruno, the character that you kind of start off liking, then kind of hating, then kind of not knowing what to think about, and then you kind of go through all kinds of emotions with this guy. And the performances from Phoenix and Cotillard, Phoenix especially, he has this crazy way of balancing like this devotion and obsession and kind of the thin line between the two, with his like animalistic fervor and stuff. So it's insane how well he does it and how compelling it is to watch this guy on screen. Like right now, I believe he is one of the greatest actors working today, for sure. After The Master and this, and countless of other roles that he's done, he is one of the best for sure. So Cotillard's performance as well. She's extremely elegant and vulnerable in this movie. It's important to know that she did not know a word of Polish before this movie, and she had to learn like 20 pages of dialogue, and she speaks it, to me anyway, she speaks it perfectly. She would like fit in Ida so well if you were to put her in Ida, that character and that role and everything. So yeah, overall the movie just worked for me. It worked story-wise, aesthetic-wise. It's very, very sort of has a very quiet power to it, and the final shot. The last thing I'll say is that the final shot of the movie is probably my favorite shot of the year so far. Technically speaking, it says way more than just 1,000 words with what it's doing, and it kind of puts split screens, to shame a little bit because of the way it's made. I'm not going to say obviously what it is, but people should watch it. I think it's still in theaters. It's Weinstein Company has its clutches on it, so it's still in theaters. And I want to just tell people not to let the god-awful poster put him away, because the poster is absolutely atrocious, but the movie is not. So yeah, they should definitely go check it out because it's one of the best of the year so far for me. What
Yeah,
did you think?
I will agree with you about the awful poster.
Yeah.
The Weinsteins once again have completely ruined uh, marketing a film that deserved much better,
Hmm.
in my opinion. You have a film with you know uh, one Academy Award winner, two multiple nominees. I think Joaquin's been nominated more than once. By the way, they're all fantastic actors, and
Yeah, I think so.
and it premiered at Cannes 2013, and the Weinstein Company screwed over James Gray. I mean, it basically
Hmm.
got dumped a year later, and it really deserved better. But actually, even though it sounds like I might love the film, I'm also going to be a bit brief on this because I saw it a few months ago. Thankfully, the French. I haven't actually. This is the first James Gray film I've seen, but they love James Gray. That's kind of well known. His films always go to Cannes. For some reason, French critics they adore his movies. He gets more love over there than he ever would in America, apparently. Um, but for me, yeah, I mean, all honesty, I didn't care for it. I was surprised uh, at that because there was so much positive word about it, especially from a lot of people that whose opinions I respect in terms of critics and whatnot. But
Yeah.
it was just a really frustrating situation for me because you have a lot of great people and they're contributing to just this material that I feel doesn't live up to their greatness. For you, like you say, it pulled you in, it didn't pull me in.
Mm.
I thought it was poor writing and that it was just it was basically this kind of melodrama that really didn't work for me at all. I found the kind of conflict between, say, Joaquin Phoenix and Jeremy Renner's character really annoying. Like every time it kind of took over the film, I kind of rolled my eyes
Mm.
because I really thought it was just over the top, and so I just yeah, I mean, it didn't particularly work for me very well. But I mean, it's far from a bad film. I think it's just to me, it's just okay. It's not
Yeah.
great. I think to throw out compliments because it does deserve compliments. Like you said, Darius Kanji is great job with
Yeah.
the cinematography. It definitely is one of those period piece films that actually can pull off the period look,
Yeah.
which is I think especially rare nowadays for films. I see so many films that they take place in a certain time, but to me it just looks like dress up, whereas this one doesn't really feel that way at all. I
Mm.
think there's a lot of kind of you see people like the symbolism. For me, this was very like I mean I'm trying to think of specific examples, but it's been so long since I've seen it of a couple, but I remember I said that the dialogue was just very like it hits you over the head with a lot of the themes and things going on in the film.
Yeah.
Um,
There is one thing that I can understand, like the whole theme of forgiveness and the whole Christian, they kind of get into that a little bit, and it is a
yeah,
little forced, especially with what happens in like in the third act and stuff. But for me, it was still deep and very meaningful and stuff. So
yeah, I don't
I
know. I mean, like,
didn't, yeah,
a lot of people they passionately love the film. I personally, like I said, I mean, it just kind of left me sitting there like, okay, I had a bit of an apathetic response, I guess.
mm,
And I will agree with you. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix, great. What was Jeremy Renner, great. I mean, Marion Cotillard, they're all great. The final shot is definitely stunning.
yeah,
I found out that it was actually not. It was created digitally, which
oh,
I know
boo,
it's a bit disappointing, but
boo,
it doesn't matter. It's still like a great shot. It works for the film. Like even at the end, I was like, wow, that's actually like as much as I didn't care for the film, that last shot, I was like, that's actually a pretty perfect kind of
yeah,
encapsulation of the film and
yeah,
everything leading up to it. So I definitely agree with the with the consensus on that. But
hmm,
yeah, no, I mean, I'll leave it at that. I mean, it didn't particularly work for me. I think it was just a matter of I appreciate it. I'll
yeah.
watch more James Gray films, but
Yeah.
yeah, this
I
one,
guess it's the melodrama. I mean, if the melodrama pulls you away, then it's not gonna work for you. And if it pulls you, and if it kind of, if it becomes synthetic to the actual story, then you're not gonna mind it, and you find that it kind of works for that period. That's what I felt like. The melodrama worked only because the period itself was captured so well, and I
mhm.
felt like characters in that whole like 1920s New York style and their emotions and all that stuff worked well with the melodramatic dialogue and stuff. Yeah.
So, well,
What's yeah
my
yeah
number
number
three
three?
has already been mentioned. I didn't want to say it earlier, but actually we discussed it. We pretty much discussed it earlier, so I won't really get into it. But my number three actually is the Lego Movie. I
Yes.
liked it more than Nick.
Yes.
Like I said, it's just great. It's hilarious.
It's awesome.
It's awesome. Yes,
Yeah.
everything is awesome. That song is definitely catchy
Yeah.
and annoying and great at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, if you have any hesitations about seeing this film, drop them, get them out of the way,
Yeah.
go see
Right
it.
away.
It's working like gangbusters in everyone for a reason. It's not like, but I think it's just a great time all around. But I'll move on to my number two. Another kind of little known film, but I watched it and took me completely by surprise. It kind of bowled me over when I watched it. This is the film. It's called A Spell to Ward Off the Darkness by Ben Rivers and Ben Russell. Two kind of avant-garde filmmakers who they've made similar projects in the past, and they finally collaborated on a feature-length film. This time they shot it on 16mm film, which it's important to mention that because the texture in the film is actually kind of a huge aspect of it to me. But so basically, the film is split into three kind of acts. People describe it as a triptych, but I don't know. I don't feel that word applies well because I feel like the three parts kind of are I don't know. It's hard to explain, but basically, to get into the plot, it's this kind of mute, unnamed man. Each act of the film, it's him living a completely different lifestyle, and then the act kind of abruptly ends, and it moves on to the next one, and now he's living a completely different type of life. In the first act, he's living on a commune in Estonia, and then that kind of just ends, and then it shows him living alone in a forest in Finland, on his own in a cabin, and then that ends, and then he's suddenly in a club in Norway in a black metal band, just playing guitar and screaming, as metal bands love to do, I guess.
Yeah. Black metal.
So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe why I like this film so much is maybe it's just personal reasons. Because the film definitely doesn't like to explain things or show its hand so much. But for me, I took it as a kind of this man's personal quest to. It's an existential quest, I think, to kind of find a self-fulfillment, to find a place of belonging, to find somewhere where he feels maybe at ease with himself, that he feels like, he can be, I guess, I don't know the word, complacent or whatever. But I think that it's, the Ben Rivers and Ben Russell, the way they do this, I call it like a cinematic powerhouse. Their talents behind the camera, the way they do things is just astounding. I the shots they have, I love that each act is, it has its very own kind of slightly subtle shift in style. The way, because they have backgrounds in ethnography, it's the way that they shoot landscapes, and they show how influential landscapes and location is on a person and how it defines a human being. The first act is kind of a documentary, focuses very handheld shots, kind of watching these people in the commune interact with each other. The second act is more long shots, static, fixed. And then the third act, with the black metal, it's steady. It's about, I think it's 2 or 3 Steadicam shots, and these are long takes.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. And I think that, I feel like the intent was to, as this man, he lives these lives that he doesn't exactly belong in. And I like that the camera actually, to me, it seems to ignore him for a lot of the film. In the first act, you don't really see him until much later into it. And then the second act, it's kind of more focused on nature shots and other things going on than him, really. And I think that does a really good job kind of showing his dissatisfaction with the ways of life that he chooses. But that final act, I think it really brings everything together. It's really cathartic. To me, it's just incredible filmmaking. It's hard to explain. It's just these long Steadicam shots of this band playing in a very tiny club, and the way the camera just kind of floats around everything it has this really amazing effect. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, I think that definitely should be people should seek it out. More of a unconventional film, definitely. But if you're willing to go for it, I think you might like it. It's like Vic and Flo. It's being handled by Kimston in the U.S. I don't know about Canadian distribution, but it got a bit of a limited release when it was playing a festival earlier this year, but it's playing slowly around the country in the U.S. and Canada, and it's going to have a bigger rollout, I think, in the fall in New York City. If you want to know play dates, go to it's kimstim.com, KIMSTIM.com, and they kind of list all the upcoming screenings. But yeah, no, Nick, I because this is, I guess, a little more obscure of a pick. I'm curious as to your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm happy to say that after like Omar, which I liked but not loved, and Vic and Flo, which I really didn't like, I can safely say that I really liked this one a lot. There's something about Spell to Ward Off the Darkness that, like you said, it's extremely appealing, and it's one of those movies that the more I think about, the more I like. Which is also in a sort of ironic way the reason why I don't have it personally in my top five, because I think I like it more as an idea than what it actually is, or the actual experience of watching it. Which I found it to be slightly tedious with its first and second act. By far for me, my favorite part is the third part.
Yeah.
Which kind of really, like you said, brings it all together in a very, very sort of, I felt it extremely spiritual in a certain way.
They use the word a lot, but I like the word transcendental.
Yeah, transcendental, yeah, for sure. They use that a lot. It's definitely like that. It definitely kind of, you feel that with this music, and I also believe that they said that they chose metal specifically because it harkens back to like this sort of pagan kind of way, and like the sort of pre-Christian way of like people who are more connected to nature and stuff like that. And it really felt like that. It really felt like definitely sort of an elevated playing field, really, in a way. So for me, yeah, I loved Spell to Ward Off the Darkness. I think that also it gets best title of the year by far.
Yeah.
And also, I love the fact, like, I love the way it started too, that 360 sort of shot of the dawn with the reflected hills and everything. It was amazing. It has so many things going for it. It's so fascinating, the way it's shot, the way it's extremely philosophical, existential and everything. Like, you can totally see that the image of the triangle that kind of appears as a symbol, and there's the way that it's divided into these three segments, which are extremely particular. The commune and the isolation part, and then this black metal kind of music. It's basically very, very alluring, very appealing. Like I said, the only reason why I don't have it in my personal top five is because the experience of watching it is kind of the idea of it overpowers the experience of watching it, in the sense that I wasn't as immersed as I feel like these movies should kind of immerse you. So I felt like a lot of the times, especially like in the first and second part, where yes, not much happens. I kind of was just going, okay, so what's going on here? But yeah, like I said, it's the more I think about it, the more I love it, and I think I'm gonna watch it again, at least one more time this year. So you never know. I mean, it might end up in my top 10 at the end of the year, because it's one of those movies that I feel like it's gonna only work better with repeat viewings, because you're gonna sort of see more things in it. And yeah, I just thought of that scene of like where he's fishing in the middle part, and then it's the scene where he's just fishing, and then rain starts to fall. It's really, really effective. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, that shot goes on for quite a while too.
Yeah.
Like 7-8 minutes. It's really long, but I mean, it works really well. I mean, it's it sounds cliche to be like, you have these long shots of nothing, of silence to evoke isolation, but it works because it's gorgeous. And I mean, I didn't even get into the spiritual aspect, maybe because I feel like I'm not in a place to discuss it, because I'm not especially, I don't know. But I mean, it's definitely there. I mean, that's obviously. I mean, the title alone is clearly talking about, you know, this kind of spiritual, supernatural, and harking back to the pagan. Like the music in the opening shot is this kind of old, like Viking era music song or something. I had to look it up, and it's I mean, it's
lots of motifs. The fire too. I mean, there's so many motifs that kind of that kind of
like, I mean, the last shot of the second act with the burning the fire is like. Yeah, and his eyes just watching it's great. But there's just so many gorgeous shots and gorgeous camera work, and I feel like that elevates it too. But I don't know. I mean, I definitely want to watch it again. I wish I had the time to watch it again. But because I feel like maybe I can delve into it a little more. Definitely very, you know, there's a lot going on underneath the surface. Probably stuff beyond even my understanding. I know that. You know, I don't have a lot of experience with philosophy, so I can't really get into the philosophical aspects of the film. But I love it, and I even love the final shot. You know, just kind of, you know, it's cathartic, it's transcendental. Yeah. That kind of transition from the isolation to just embracing the kind of primal fury from the black metal, but yet, you know, it still moves on to yet another thing. I mean, sure,
he's moving on to something else.
He's moving on to something else, and
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that alone, I related a lot to it on that aspect, the existential aspect, for sure. I definitely related to it. There was a grand point to all of this, but I forget already. But I mean, I hope that a lot of people see it. I was going to see it at TIFF. I didn't see because I thought it might be boring. And someone told me it was boring, and then when I actually watched it, I was like completely engrossed by it.
Yeah.
But
for sure. People should definitely seek this out. Definitely.
Yeah, I hope it gets a release in Canada. I'd love to go see it in theaters because I think it would really owe to it. But definitely anyone, you know, go see the film if you have the opportunity. But we'll move on.
Let's move on to my.
So your number two.
Yes, my number two is the movie that has saved vampires. It's called Only Lovers Left Alive. Of course, it's directed by Jim Jarmusch. It stars the always amazing Tilda Swinton, Tom Hiddleston, and John Hurt. And basically the plot, if you want to call it a plot, is about a man who is not a man, who's a vampire. His name is Adam. He's depressed. He's a musician, and he reconnects with his lover Eve, who they've been lovers for centuries and centuries. You may have noticed that it's Adam and Eve, but and she comes from Tangiers to see him or visit him in Detroit, and to help him through this depression. And he's depressed because he is basically disappointed in humanity and the way that it's sort of evolved throughout the centuries. And and then her sister Ava, played by Mia Wasikowska, comes into play, and she messes things up because she kind of just invites herself into Adam's home, and these guys kind of just sort of go through life, listen to music, drink blood, and live on. It's crazy that it's a movie that I have to confess, it premiered last year. It was in 2013. It premiered at Cannes, and it was a TIFF. It's one of those movies that was at festivals. I wasn't able to catch it at any of these festivals, and I saw it on release in North America and Canada when it got released here. And I was slightly tipsy when I watched it, so it may be influencing my love a little bit for it, just a tiny bit. But I don't think so. I think that there's a lot of things to love in this movie. And I'll just go through a few of the things that I really loved, and then I'll just move it on to you, CJ. Basically, the fact that Jarmusch has effectively made vampires cool again alone is a big plus for me, because I love vampires themselves. I love the ideas. I read, Bram Stoker's Dracula and Dreyer's Vampire is like one of my favorite movies of all time, and blah blah blah. So I think that the whole thing with Twilight and everything that happened really did a disservice to the whole mythos. And what Jarmusch does with Swinton and Hiddleston is really wash away this whole aftertaste of this teenage invasion on the vampire lore, and he does it very, very well with this whole style in the movie, the wardrobe, the music, the lifestyles, and this whole attitude that they have towards life and lifestyle itself is used in a very sort of realistic and modern way with vampires, and one of the best sort of takes on vampires that I've seen, especially at least modern vampires in any case. So what else can I say about this movie? The best soundtrack of the year, and then some, for sure. Under the Skin has a great soundtrack, but it's not a soundtrack that I'm going to be playing over and over again like I will with Only Lovers Left Alive. I think I'd probably kill myself if I listen to Under the Skin a lot. This one is full of crazy retro music, that probably Tarantino himself would be jealous of. And I loved it. I loved every song in it. Just the theme of music itself, the way that the immortality of music is compared to the immortality of vampires and how it's expressed through Adam's depression is pretty genius, I would say. And, the whole idea that how he's oppressed at humanity is another thing that I think is so realistic when it comes to vampires. Like, I think that if there was actual vampires in this world, they would be super disappointed in humanity. And I think that they really all pulled it off very, very well. Finally, I'll just say, like, the whole plotlessness of the movie. There's a lot of films that kind of don't really pay attention too much to narrative and plot, and usually these movies, if they work, they end up being some of my favorite of the year because they actually say something about the characters or the themes or the times, with this plotlessness, let's say. And Jarmusch really uses it very well to kind of depict this sort of infinite lifestyle that's stuck in some kind of like bohemianism and looping like a broken record and stuff like that. So it just made me feel like home for 2 hours. And I think that it's his best movie since Coffee and Cigarettes. So that's been over 10 years ago. And it's coming out on Blu-ray on August 19th. So it's very soon. I'm definitely going to buy it. And so should you people who are listening. And I think it's currently on video on demand. I'm not sure. I think it's also in select theaters. So you should people probably check your local listings and stuff. But check it out. If you haven't already, then definitely go see it because for Jarmusch fans, it's absolutely amazing. CJ?
Yeah, it's definitely still playing in theaters. I saw it a few weeks ago, actually.
Nice.
My local indie theater was able to finally get it in 35 millimeter, no less, which I was a little surprised by.
Oh, man.
It was actually at a print, but
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I might as well reveal it right now. But Only Lovers Left Alive is actually my my number one, my favorite film of the year. Nice. I saw this film back at TIFF. There's a bit of a running theme here, and I wasn't, because I was in the festival kind of atmosphere,
Frenzy, yeah.
So I wasn't sure, but I knew I liked it. I liked it a lot, and then as time went on, that film just kind of stuck out more and more and more and more to me, and then by the end, I saw it again recently. I loved it even more. I was, I adore. I think, I've been a bit of a late comer to Jarmusch's films. I've only been watching a few, but in all honesty, I haven't disliked a single one so far. I haven't seen many, but I haven't disliked a single one. I even like Limits of Control, which people hate, and yet I like that movie a lot. This might be my favorite of the ones I've seen, this or Night on Earth, but basically, I mean, I like you said, I mean, I adore the plotlessness. I think that's what Jarmusch does best. He knows how to make characters, how to make a specific mood where you're really just, you can just watch these characters, you can just watch this kind of world unfolding on screen, and you really can get involved, and I'm perfectly satisfied watching that. I love that, the even though, say Adam is, morose and miserable,
Yes.
and Eve is kind of the optimist, the more lively one, the happier one. You know, despite the fact that Adam was so miserable, I was kind of living vicariously through these characters while watching them.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about immortality, and what I love is about what Jarmusch does that I adore in this film is how he shows that, you know, for these characters, when time doesn't matter, they don't care about people, because people, they don't, how do I put it, they people don't. They don't last, you know, they die.
Yeah,
they die. Whereas, you know,
they have an expiry date.
Yeah, people die.
Yeah.
But as for art, culture, that lives on. That's immortal. You know, that's a legacy that lives on. And that's essentially their friends. That's essentially their, you know, who they bond with throughout the film.
Cool.
And I love that take on it. I love that take on immortality. I love that these are just characters who just spend their time absorbing, embracing art, culture, what have you. That they have this vast knowledge built up over centuries, you know, like I don't know, like I totally was loving how they could just tell the age of something by touching it, like just these, you know, these details.
Yeah, or how they read books.
Yeah, they can read books. They apparently know so many languages and all that. You kind of watch them like, oh, and I mean, Jarmusch is a kind of director, you know, and it's also it's a really funny film too. It's very dry humor, but that's what Jarmusch does. But it is quite funny, quite entertaining. Terrific soundtrack, as you said. I actually kind of prefer Under the Skin better because I think it was more effective in the film, even though I didn't care for Under the Skin. But it's one of the best soundtracks of the year for me.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, Jarmusch is the type of director where it's like, you know, he can throw in these references to, you know, Jack White, David Foster Wallace, Chris Marlowe, Byron, you know, throws out little jokey references like Fibonacci and a couple, like, you know, I remember there's one with F. Scott Fitzgerald or something, and I feel like if 99.9% of other people tried this, like, their head would be so far up their ass. But Jarmusch, he is just that cool enough where he can pull it off. And it works flawlessly. It doesn't ever feel, it just feels totally, it works. So I don't know. I mean, I the movie grew on me a bit, but I love it a ton. It's
the locations too are amazing. Then Tangiers and Detroit.
Detroit, and I love the whole theme about the kind of death and rebirth of Detroit and the way they kind of just casually weave in and stuff. And like I said, the plotlessness, it's also, I think the plotlessness, it's so weird to say plotlessness.
Yeah, I know. It's a hard word to say.
It works an advantage in this film because you are watching characters where, I mean, this is a 2-hour film. What's 2 hours to these characters when they've lived for centuries, right? So it does, it works even more. But yeah, no, I'll leave it at that. I love the film, and it's my favorite. We're actually, it's a bit rare because Dustin and Bernard were the ones who reviewed it on the site. Dustin saw it at Cannes, Bernard saw it. They don't like the film.
Really?
Yeah, they don't like it.
That's interesting.
And it's been a bit of a point of contention. We always mention how, but I know me, you, Ananda love it.
Nice.
So yeah, but definitely don't listen to the reviews on the site. Listen to us.
Listen to us. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's my number
has
one.
It in your top 5.
Yeah, my number 1, your number 2.
Yes,
Let's
my
move
number
on to
1.
Your number 1.
Yeah, my number 1. That's gonna end it all. My number 1 is Nymphomaniac, directed by Lars von Trier. I'm picking Nymphomaniac, both volumes. Okay, before people start freaking out, I'm not picking Nymphomaniac Volume 1 or Nymphomaniac Volume 2. I'm picking Nymphomaniac as a whole because it's one movie in 2 parts. So I'm just going to get that out of the way, even though it's released in 2 volumes, kind of like Kill Bill was released, Kill Bill Volume 1, Volume 2, but it's actually just Kill Bill. Nymphomaniac is the same thing. So, I mean, where do I begin with this movie? I absolutely loved it. I actually reviewed it. It was my first review for Way Too Indie, and I feel kind of like blessed that it was like my introduction to the site and everything because I absolutely loved it. I reviewed Volume 1 when it came out on video on demand, and then later on I reviewed Volume 2 as well, so you can check it out there, and my reviews will tell you how much I loved it. And it probably won't surprise you that I have it in my number 1 spot. It's the third and final part of von Trier's Depression trilogy, the first part being Antichrist followed by Melancholia, and now Nymphomaniac. Nymphomaniac, to me, even though I really liked Antichrist quite a lot, I didn't care for Melancholia so much. I find that Nymphomaniac is like on a different level than both of them by far. I think it's one of the best Lars von Trier movies ever. It's probably, people are calling it his magnum opus. I would say that, maybe not. I think I like Breaking the Waves a little bit more than Nymphomaniac at the end of the day when it's all said and done, but I can understand how all his movies kind of built up to something like Nymphomaniac, which is, I think, 4.5 hours. In its uncut version, which premiered in Denmark, is 4.5 hours long. Crazy story. What?
No, sorry, it's four. I think the
Five and a
uncut
half?
version is actually longer. It's five and a half. But
five
the
and a
cut,
half,
but the
yeah.
version that's out now, the cut version is just 4.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it's 5.5 hours. Yeah. So the story just follows this woman, mysterious woman called Jo, who is played by Charlotte Gainsbourg, one of von Trier's regulars, I guess you could say, and she's found by another von Trier regular, Stellan Skarsgård, who finds her on the street, kind of just bleeding, and helps her out. He's a man who lives alone in his apartment, and she tells him her story rather, which is kind of, she tells him in chapter form, and it's very very the whole movie is really basically two people talking, but it's told in chapter form, and the way that their conversation goes is extremely compelling because of the part of the reason why Volume 1, for example, is so entertaining is because Stellan Skarsgård goes into all these kinds of digressions on fly fishing and Edgar Allan Poe and all sorts of things, which infuse the movie with so much culture and so much just intellectual depth that I completely support, and it's completely is something that falls right into my wheelhouse. Like, I love these kinds of movies, and it's. Let me see here. I'm just taking out my notes. Why I think it's amazing. He's von Trier is one of today's, I would say, greatest and most interesting filmmakers. I don't care so much for his off-screen stuff, like his antics and jokes or whatever, that people kind of like to talk about a lot. But for me, it's the cinema that he kind of breaks these barriers with his cinema, and he continues to do that, and he does that with Nymphomaniac and this idea of sex, which he does through this female perspective, which again, something extremely ballsy, I find, extremely rare, and only he can kind of pull it off effectively. So I find that it's Volume 1 with its stylistic entertainment and extremely funny in many moments, surprisingly so, is contrasted very nicely with Volume 2, which a lot of people don't like as much. I believe I think that maybe you guys are going to hear about Dustin talking about Volume 1 and Volume 2 in a very different way. But for me, Volume 2 is very different. Yes, it's much darker. It's much more intense and much more depressing, which is kind of where von Trier excels. And I think that they're perfect companion pieces because Volume 2 kind of goes into really the dark parts of the human soul and the human condition. And like I said, I can really talk about this movie a lot because there's so much into it, like the religious aspects, the ideas of how von Trier is influenced by Tarkovsky. The Tarkovsky influences are all over the place, including a chapter called The Mirror, and even the beginning part of it is all very, very much influenced by Tarkovsky. He even gets a shout out at the end credits. And I should mention that Tarkovsky is one of my favorite directors. So all these things kind of point to the fact that Nymphomaniac is my favorite movie of the year so far, and is very likely going to end up being in my top 5, top 10 of the year, end of the year, because it's extremely unique, original, funny, smart, intelligent, what have you, everything. It's everything. What did you think, CJ?
Well, I'll start off by saying that Lars von Trier is, I think, one of the best directors working today. I'm not one particularly big on filmography, in that Breaking the Waves didn't really work on me, surprisingly, but I adore Dogville. I enjoy Dancer in the Dark. I think Antichrist is a masterpiece. I think Melancholia is a masterpiece. I was anticipating Nymphomaniac so much. I saw it opening day, and yeah, I mean, I much like Ida, I was, I liked it, but I don't know. I for Lars, I say Lars instead of Von Trier because I don't know. It's weird for me to say Von Trier, but
Yeah.
For Lars, it was disappointing to me. But maybe it's because I adored his last two films before that, and this one to me was just merely, it was good. And I agree with you, by the way. It is one film, not two. Considering Volume 2 literally starts like immediately. It's literally like they just picked a point partway through the film and they just cut and they're like, okay, this is Volume 1, because it just starts right off the bat.
Even though they are distinctly different, I mean, they are.
They are different. I mean, it makes sense tonally because yes, Volume 1 is. I actually at first I liked Volume 2 more than Volume 1, but I think I changed my mind. I think I prefer Volume 1 more now. If I had to choose, I really consider it one film, but because Volume 1 is funny, and I was actually kind of happy to see Lars von Trier be cheeky again in his films. To be funny, and and it works quite well. The digressions are fun, but to me, this is a 4-hour film. It's filled with explicit sex and these dark subject matters. Yet, for me, honestly, it felt like one of Lars von Trier's tamest films yet. I always love his films because I think that he always finds a way to provoke people. He's a provocateur, like, definitely, and that's what always draws me to his films. This one didn't do as much. I actually talked to Blake a bit earlier. He liked it a lot less than me. He loved Volume 1. He didn't like Volume 2, actually. So
that seems to be the way with a lot of people.
Yeah, and he was more extreme on it than me. I mean, but he said I like when Lars von Trier is shocking, not dull. And he thought Nymphomaniac was dull. I understand. I'm more in line with that sentiment, although I don't agree with it because I don't think the film is ever really dull. But yeah, I was surprised at just how tamed it was. And when I first saw it, the first comment I remember running through my mind when I was watching it was Lars von Trier's, it's the provocateur's burden. Joe is essentially him. It's definitely a response to what happened with Can after Melancholia. Because he's basically, the whole point of Joe and using it as kind of a symbol for him symbol's not the right word, but it's kind of showing how there are people you gotta let their freak flags fly. It's kind of like these people, this is the way they are and you can't really change them, you shouldn't reject them and all that, and Lars is saying that about himself. Like he's very much Joe.
He's very much about the freedom of speech and freedom of art.
Yeah, the freedom about like if he wants to say weird shit or piss people off or whatever. Yeah. And it's there's always that self-aware, reflexive kind of aspect to his films. Here didn't work for me as much, although I did laugh a lot at the Antichrist reference in the film. Like I laughed really hard. I thought that was really twisted and funny.
That's great.
But I don't know. I like the film. I don't think I'd ever watch it again personally. I don't really have an urge to. We should also mention that like even though she's in one scene, Uma Thurman is incredible. I want her to work with Lars von Trier on a film now.
It's like her best role since Pulp Fiction, easily.
It's her best role in ages, and you don't expect it because you're like, holy shit.
I know.
Uma Thurman can act. I haven't seen her act like that in ages.
She's great.
Yeah, no. Well, actually, I'd say it's probably her best role since Kill Bill, but anyway.
Since what?
Kill Bill, right?
Kill Bill. True. Yeah.
But still, like, I mean, but she hasn't done, I haven't seen her really do a role like that. And that's why I love Lars von Trier too. He finds a ways. He really is an actor's director. He pulls up great performances. Not so much from Shia LaBeouf, but you can't expect the man to turn shit into gold.
Well, I actually didn't mind Shia LaBeouf so much. I'm not a fan of Shia LaBeouf,
I
but
couldn't stand his accent.
yeah, I couldn't. I know. I could. I was okay with him here. I was okay with him here because he kind of played like a fumbling fool, and I felt like, okay, that Shia LaBeouf can play that because that's kind of how I see him as. So yeah,
It's like
felt
Ian
good.
Stevens all grown up.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's funny
like,
you say that because I actually can't wait to see it again. I can't wait to see it again in its entirety. Hopefully, I'm hoping that Criterion is going to end up releasing it as like one film, uncut version, whatever. And it's
well,
also
no.
worth to mention, I guess, that it's the second volume is going to be released or it's going to premiere at TIFF this year,
Well,
uncut version. So yeah.
they might do a full screening of it, but the thing is, no, they're actually going to keep it in 2 volumes for the uncut version as well. I thought it was going to be one film, but the split apparently is deliberate, and they're going to keep it that way because they premiered volume 1 uncut in Berlin, and people quite liked it. But they actually heard that people honestly couldn't even tell the difference between the 2 cuts.
Really?
Yeah, people they honestly they were kind of like they weren't especially sure of it, I guess. But it seems like it's just.
Oh, you
hard
mean
to-
the two? All right, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
The
people who saw it,
difference, so
people
the
who saw
censorship
the-
wasn't so bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, so they because the version we've seen is the producer's cut, and
Yeah.
Von Trier approved it, but it's really and,
No,
I
but
mean, I did-
apparently he didn't because the version I saw anyway, the one that I had to review for Way to Indie was the one on video on demand, and there's this message that appears right away and says Von Trier does not approve of this. Like it's not. It goes against his wishes.
What
Goes
I meant,
against
yeah,
his-
no. What I meant, sorry, yeah, I just realized, yeah, no, I meant like he approved them cutting the movie. He doesn't approve the
yeah.
cut, but like,
Doesn't approve
that's
the
what
cut.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't know. I
Okay, so
just
it's not gonna release
I don't
in
know.
May,
It
yeah.
didn't really. I usually love discussing Von Trier's films. I love everything. This one kind of just left me like, well, that was fine. It was good. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like I said, I feel like it honestly is. It's might be his most mainstream film yet, which is a shock. It doesn't.
Volume
even
1 for sure. Volume 1 is probably his more mainstream one, but then Volume 2, I would definitely disagree. If you think that Volume 2 is also mainstream, then I would have to disagree with you there. As one whole, I would say because of Volume 2, because of how tonally it's different, and it goes into some crazy stuff, like very, very dark places, I would say that it's definitely not mainstream. But
I think so, but I mean overall, yeah. I don't know.
yeah.
I wish there was this one review I read of the film a while ago that I think nailed it on the head. But I should have read it before this because I would have just quoted from it. But yeah, well, I mean, I can't really say much more than that. Sadly, I was shocked because almost
You were
every other
expecting
Von
more,
Trier
I
film I
guess.
love, I could go on like Antichrist. I could talk and talk and talk and talk.
Mhm.
Melancholia, same thing. This one,
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, because I didn't care for Melancholia at all, and then this one kind of maybe because he disappointed me slightly with his last one.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it so much, so to be so wild, and then I was wild. So yeah,
it could totally happen.
Who
Yeah.
knows?
I mean, that could absolutely contribute. I
To
mean,
me,
obviously, I mean, it could make you the surprise aspect made you love it even more because you didn't
yeah,
expect it.
maybe.
Just like the fact that it didn't live up to the other films I saw might have made me
Yeah,
slightly
exactly.
more cooled off on it. Although I like the film, it's enjoyable. I definitely would. I would only recommend it to Von Trier fans because it's the length and it's kind of daunting, but
Yeah, it is
By the
very
way-
Von Trier-like, and I think that I wouldn't definitely never recommend it to anybody who's never seen a Von Trier movie to watch Nymphomaniac as their first Von Trier movie. I would probably never do that, but for those who know Von Trier, definitely watch Nymphomaniac, I would say.
All right, so that's going to actually wrap up our big old top 5 segment. And that's that. We got it. We got through it.
Yay!
But-
It's over!
Not yet. We got the one little thing. So to wrap things up, we thought, okay, we're going to look ahead. And we're going to look at
Yes.
the other half of 2014 because, we have films we're looking forward to on top of, we have films that we've already seen that haven't come out yet. So, we just, I figured we could kind of, briefly discuss, what we are looking forward to as the year, in the second half of the year, or at least, what we've already seen and can't wait to come out, films that say we would put in our top 5 had they come out already. So, I'll let you start, Nick. on this one?
Well, yeah, I didn't get actually too much of a chance to research deeply enough to find out what movies are coming out that I haven't seen yet or I haven't heard of yet. But I'm sure that there's tons of movies that I still need to see or that I don't know that are coming out. But Paul Thomas Anderson's Inherent Vice, that's for sure going to be very, very close to the top, if not at the top. Paul Thomas Anderson is one of my favorite filmmakers, as I'm sure he is for many, many other people. And Inherent Vice, of course, people have heard of it. Joaquin Phoenix again, slightly different because it's a little bit of a comedy, I think. It's adapted from a Thomas Pynchon novel. Anyways, whatever it is, it's Paul Thomas Anderson. So I'm there, and I'm going to be watching it. I hope it's going to premiere at TIFF.
Definitely Venice.
Definitely Venice again, yeah, like The Master and then TIFF, yeah. Then there is the Roy Andersson movie, A Pigeon Sat on the Branch Reflecting on Existence. I think that's going to probably, like they're saying, premiere at Venice. But I'm hoping it's going to, yeah, fingers crossed. I'm hoping that it's going to be at TIFF in any case because I'm not going to Venice. So TIFF, hopefully, so that I can finally watch it. I'm a huge Anderson fan, and I've been waiting for this movie for years. It's like he's teasing us with this movie every year at Cannes. It's got prediction lists. It's going to be Roy Anderson's Pigeon Sat on a Branch, and it's never there. So it's like, come on already.
I just gave up. I gave up. I want to see it. I love Anderson, but I gave up. I'm like, nope. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna just pretend it's not there until it's there. Then I'll be excited.
Exactly. What else? I was gonna say Terrence Malick's The Knight of Cups, but I think that's actually gonna premiere in 2015, from what I heard. And then movies that I've seen already that are gonna come out. I've seen at Cannes. I was happy. I was fortunate enough to go at Cannes this year, and I've seen a couple of movies that I'm gonna mention right now. Winter Sleep, the one that won the Palme d'Or, is one of the movies that I'm pretty sure it's gonna get a release this year. It's fantastic. It's amazing. It's a deserved winner. Leviathan, the Russian masterpiece by Ignatiev, amazing. Probably gonna premiere at TIFF again. I can't wait for people to see it and start talking about it more. And Hoja, which is the movie by Lisandro Alonso. Again, this guy, he's made something special with this movie, and I hope people watch it and like it. It's gonna be for the more outcast crowd because it's definitely a bit of a strange, weird kind of movie that the mainstream crowd is definitely not going to like very much, but those art house diehards out there are going to connect to it, I believe, I hope anyway, because I did. So those three movies came out of Cannes, and I absolutely love them. And yeah, I would say that that's kind of the nutshell of what I'm looking forward to. Like I said, there's way more stuff out there, I'm sure, but that's on top of my list. How about you?
Okay, well, yeah, no, I mean, I didn't really look into films coming out because, I mean, I only really pay attention when the festival, like, I mean, TIFF releases this lineup, Venice releases this lineup, Telluride, for instance. That's when I start, paying attention. So I don't really look too far ahead. But
Yeah.
I definitely will check out Inherent Vice because everyone will check out Inherent Vice.
Yeah.
Who
Who's
loves
gonna explode?
cinema.
Yeah.
But I'll Roy Anderson is just he's amazing, and if anyone is not familiar, I say get familiar.
Yeah.
I know Terrence Davies is shooting a film in 70mm right now, which is like Terrence Davies in 70mm, like put it in my damn eyes now,
Yeah,
like
seriously.
right now. I swear to God. I watched The Long Day Closes earlier this year, and it's just it blew me away. I mean, I can't. It might be one of my favorites of all time now, but
Wow.
but I'll talk about films that I have seen that's coming out. Definitely, we saw this together at TIFF last year. Stray Dogs, the Tsai Ming Liang film.
Oh yeah.
Tsai Ming Liang he's one of my favorite directors, working today, or not working. He said he was retiring, and then he made another movie. Because, but I don't care. He's the next more movies. I'm
Because
happy.
he's Tsai Ming-liang.
Yeah,
But he's
Stray,
coming out. It's coming out. It's getting a release.
Stray Dogs, yeah, it got picked up for distribution Cinema Guild, and they're releasing in August, I think, or
Nice.
July,
Very good.
sometime in the summer. Either way, I am ecstatic that it's getting a release. I hope people see it. I think it is a masterpiece by Tsai. It's one of his best films. I think the last two shots are unlike anything I've experienced watching a movie in theaters.
Yeah.
It's totally
Yeah, that movie
unique.
is crazy.
I mean, like even people, people they're not so cool about before, but those last shots, especially the second last shot, it bowls you over. It kind of shows. I mean, that to me is like that might be. It's a sign of where cinema might be going. You know? So I'll leave that at that. And,
Yeah.
Another film that I like quite a bit I saw was The Strange Little Cat by Ramon Zurcher. It was a student film, and it's like the definition of beguiling. You know, it's just a family preparing for like a reunion dinner at their apartment, and it's just watching. It's like watching a really elaborately rehearsed and choreographed event going on. You just see all of these like different interactions going on in this one room with different people, and everything's going on at once, and yet everything is kind of isolated in its own sense, and it's very hard to describe, but it has a lot of influence. People point out it has like Tati and a couple of them. It was Bela Tarr actually. It was the film I think was inspired by a lecture Bela Tarr gave. That's where it came out of.
No.
It's like short. It's like just over an hour, but it's totally totally fascinating. I can't wait to see it again.
Nice. It was a TIFF last year, right?
It was a TIFF. I got to see it after, but it was definitely a film that it stuck with me, and I definitely want to watch it again. And
Amazing.
Thirdly is a film I caught at Hot Docs earlier this year when I covered it. It's called The Overnighters.
Yes.
It's a documentary about a town in North Dakota, I believe, called Williston. They are actually, even though America's in a bad economic time, they have a boom because they have these recently discovered, oil sand, not oil sands. They did fracking, and then they found oil underneath the ground, and that kind of shored up business. So people are flocking to this town, and the documentary is about a pastor in this small town who basically lets new arrivals in to sleep in his church until they find work and get on their feet. And he faces the kind of nonstop aggression and resistance from the townspeople because they are very skeptical of these people and they're very afraid of them. We talk about Lars von Trier. When I watched this film, I thought, this is like a documentary that's very close to the Golden Heart trilogy of Breaking the Waves and Dance of the Dark, because it's about a man who, he has... I watched it a second time, and my opinion completely changed on this guy. First time I watched it, I loved him. I thought, I admired him so much because he's so virtuous and like people stay, and he just wouldn't give up. Second time, you can start seeing how it's kind of selfish. It's a really fascinating portrait of this guy, and just what's amazing is the way the documentary has all of these narrative strands going on. How narrative it is, it really does feel like a film, like a drama unfolding. And the ending is it's crazy. You can't describe the ending. I wish I could, because it really contextualizes everything, but you can't really talk, but you have to experience it for yourself.
Yeah.
I actually interviewed the director when I went to Hot Docs, and that's going to go online, it's getting released in the fall. Strange Little Cat as well, I forgot to mention, that's getting released in the summer, I believe. I had a really good discussion with the director Jesse Moss of The Overnighters, and we got into an in-depth discussion. So in the fall, I know Draft House is releasing in the fall. I think they're going for an Oscar push like they did with The Act of Killing last year. I really hope this one makes it. I hope, because it's a really excellent documentary, and I think it's terrific. Now, quickly mention as well, I kind of went on a little bit there, but it's a really good film, and I can't wait till it comes out.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch it.
The Cannes titles, Winter's Sleep, The Wonders, Leviathan. The award winners, of course, Goodbye to Language, Bird Peoples, one in Insert Regard I'm looking forward to a lot. Tourists, another Insert Regard. It Follows, that's in Critics Week.
Yep.
And the Alonso film, which I'm definitely looking forward to. I think it came out towards the end as the best reviewed film of the festival.
Yeah.
So all of these films at Cannes, I can't wait to see. Although, amazingly, Winter Sleep, no distribution yet. So
That's
we'll
crazy.
see.
It's nuts.
We'll see.
Maybe it's the running time that's scaring people away, but
Yeah,
that surprises
probably.
me. Yeah.
But okay, so that about wraps it up for us. So just to quickly summarize and go through our big discussion, our honorable mentions were Norte, The End of History, Oculus, Monica Mana, Joe, The Grand Budapest Hotel, and X-Men: Days of Future Past. My own top 5 was Omar at number 5, Vic and Flo Saw a Bear at number 4, The Lego Movie at number 3, number 2 was Spell to Ward Off the Darkness, and number 1 was Only Lovers Left Alive. Nick's top 5 was The Lego Movie at 5, number 4 was Ida, number 3 was The Immigrant, number 2 was Only Lovers Left Alive, and number 1 was Nymphomaniac Volumes 1 and 2. So be sure to keep checking the site, way2indie.com, of course, for reviews, interviews, festival coverage, news, what have you.
Everything.
We got more coming at you every day. Check us out on Google+, on YouTube. We got great videos there. We have a few film essays about Terrence Malick, Darren Aronofsky, Wes Anderson that are definitely worth checking out. Check us out on Twitter at way2indie. My Twitter is at Ubudess, or as spelled out OOOBOODESS. I promise I'll change it one day. I just need to find a better handle. Okay, Nick.
I like it. Yeah, my Twitter is Nick
Yes.
Grape. It's slightly easier. NIK though, not NICK. NIK Grape. Yeah, check me out on Twitter. And that's it. Maybe my blog as well, my own personal blog, is thefilmgrapevine.com. Haven't been updating it as much as I'd like to, just because I've been so busy lately, but I promise that I'm going to actually put my so far of the year top 10 in there. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about each movie in there. So you'll find out the other top basically 6 to 10 in that list. So yeah, that's me.
All right, so I guess that wraps it up. So
All
okay,
right.
so remember everybody, if you're still here with us at the end of this, this is part 1 of 3. So in the next few days, we're gonna have Ananda Dillon and Bernard Boo, our other reviewers on the site.
The West Coast.
The West Coast. We are North Coast.
Yeah.
They will go. They will have their discussion of their 5 favorites, which I'm sure will be quite different from ours. And Dustin and Blake will be the last part. They're going to sit down and discuss their favorites, which I'm sure will be different from ours for the most part.
We're just very different.
We're all different. We all have our own tastes.
Yeah.
We have variety. That's what we need.
Variety
Okay,
spice
so
it up.
until then, everyone, keep supporting independent cinema, keep watching indies, and be sure to go to your local indie theater and watch movies there.
Yes.
Because we need more indie theaters. You can't watch indie films without indie theaters because multiplexes aren't going to play them. Simple as that.
Exactly. Agreed. I
All right.
concur.
All right. Goodbye.
Guys. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, CJ.